Welcome to the Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Real Estate Podcast, hosted by myself, Paul Cyan, Realtor with HER Realtors, licensed in the state of Ohio and Kentucky. I'd like to welcome my guest today from Good Eye Home Inspections, Todd Engle. His website is Good Eye Inspections. That's good, E-Y-E, inspections.com. Todd, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for the invite, Paul.
Well, thank you for being on this very first podcast of mine. It's something I hope to do every month and wanting to have great experts like you out here. So why don't we start, and why don't you tell me what is the training for a home inspector?
Well, there's many avenues and opportunities for training and getting into the business. Mine was the School of Hard Knocks, buying and selling and flipping homes, approximately 23 in the last 10 years. But I did become a certified professional inspector through INTRNACHI. INTRNACHI is the International Society of Certified Home Inspectors. They're the only organization that is truly recognized by most of the 23 states that require licensing for home inspectors. I got into the business because I love homes and love taking care of people.
What kind of training is that involved? Is there, like a couple months worth of training? Is there hour requirements?
That's a good question. You can pretty much do either all online training to learn that part of it, but the true training can come through schools where you can spend a week in a school, but you still have to do continuing education every year and pass certain tests through INTRNACHI to even stay with them as a member.
Okay. And how long have you been inspecting homes?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
Can you describe the typical home inspection process? You get a home buyer come to you. When we're preparing to buy this home, can you inspect it for us? And what do you do after that?
Basically, talk to the client. Obviously, gather some information. Ask them if there's any concerns that they saw when they were at the house themselves. Most people will point out one or two things or notice something that they saw in the seller disclosure about a previous leak in a bathroom, leak in the ceiling, the age of the roof. So I'll kind of feel them out about that and their major concerns right off the bat. And then I'll send them a sample inspection report of my previous work so it can show them how detailed we get.
Okay. And when you're going through inspections, are there some common ones that you normally find, common issues?
Yes. There's usually always electrical issues, whether it's inside the main electrical panel or outlets and receptacles that are on the floor, kitchen, any kind of outlet or receptacle that is not wired correctly, possibly an open ground or what's called reverse polarity, which could be a fire hazard. But most of the time it's inside the electrical panel, and even though the house may be either new or 10 years old, somebody's probably been inside that panel and done something wrong at one time. Usually, always, I don't want to say always, but half the time we'll find leaks underneath sinks. Those would be the two big common things.
Okay. And then what's the inspection like for an HVAC system, your heating and cooling? I mean, what is involved in that? How do you do that?
Those are pretty general. We don't take apart or dismantle the furnace or the air conditioning unit. We're looking for some major things on the outside of an air conditioning unit not being level. The suction line, which is the black foam part behind there, is usually always rotted off and not in good condition. That needs to be full and in good condition. And on the furnace, whether it's heating and cooling or heating the home properly, we do temperature readings from the vents and the registers, and there should be what's called a good temperature differential of 20 degrees or less between the farthest return to the farthest register. Should be between 15 and 20 degrees. We will take off the main panel of gas and electric furnaces, just look inside and see if there's any corrosion, frayed, or burnt wires. Common thing I see at the bottom of some furnaces is there's an emergency shutoff switch that if you dismantle the bottom panel of the furnace, that's an emergency shutoff should be shut off and shut the whole system down. Some people tape that unit up. Well, what if your children are down there playing in the basement and then they pull that panel off and stick their hand in the air handler? Mm-hmm. It's gonna hurt.
Okay. Yeah, and I've had an issue on the past inspection where I was the seller's agent, and there was an issue with the garage door. And, basically, garage door pressure reverse is what this inspector stated was an issue. How do you inspect a garage door? And tell us about Tell us about the garage door openers. And
On garage door, that would be the auto reverse. That's been required since, I believe, 1992, and it should not be any higher than 8 inches off the floor, and it should not be totally on the floor, and it should not be attached to the ceiling, unless you have a 9-foot child. I've seen them attached to the ceilings. Somebody just not put them in correctly. But those auto reverse sensors, they have killed children in the past. That should be installed on each side of the garage door, and it basically, when it has a sensor and it senses movement in the area, and it reverses the garage door. Some other things we look at on garage doors would be the chain. If there is a chain, sometimes there's a huge flack in the chain. It's loose. And then also bolts in the ceiling come loose. You remember erector sets? Certain kids remember that, or certain adults. And erector sets, if you don't tighten those bolts tight enough, they'll fall apart, just like a garage door coming out of the ceiling. So there's some of the 3 big issues we look at on garage doors.
Okay. And what do you recommend for like the average homeowner to, say, maintain their HVAC, just if they need to do something on their own? I know, like, changing the air filter is a common thing. Is there something that you would suggest to homeowners that they could do?
Definitely mark yourself a calendar, whether you're old school and use a calendar or a smartphone. Put a reminder in your phone to check your furnace filter monthly, at minimum 90 days. Not recommend at all using a thick, expensive furnace filter, because they actually can hurt your unit and slow it down. I recommend every client what's called an eco-friendly filter. They're about $20, but I've had mine 12 years and never had to replace it. You do have to take it out and clean it and then put it back after it dries, but an eco-friendly filter is the best one to use, I believe.
Okay. And then for garage doors, similar, regular tune-ups?
Good question there, Paul. They have an Aluma-Lube, depending on your tracks. Some people use Aluma-Lube or a WD-40. Squirt it in there maybe every 4 months to help keep the track running smooth.
Okay. That's very good advice. Why don't you tell us about termite inspections? Is that something you do, and what's done with the termite inspection? How do you observe termite activity?
I don't personally do termite inspections. We have an outside company that we hire to take care of that. There is a license that the termite company has to have. This is 100% mandatory and required because of the chemicals that they use. So we always subcontract that out, or if the client wants to choose somebody of their own, that's their option. I usually find termite tunnels before the termite inspector gets there. They look like the size of a pencil. They are brown, and they run up from the ground or mostly up inside joists or any kind of wood contact. Big thing with termites in Cincinnati, there are a lot of them. And we find them on condos and a lot of homes. I would say about 30%. What you want to do is make sure that termites are not brought in from the mulch you buy at the store, or you buy big mulch. They can be brought in from your mulch truck. And then you don't even know it, and you've dumped termites on your own property that used to be clean. Mm-hmm. So it is very common, but it can be treated.
Okay. And how do you determine the extent of damage that the termites do? I mean, is there some visual inspection?
Yeah, visual, and take a screwdriver and stick it in the wood.
Okay.
We will not damage anything while we're out of the property, but if we see a tunnel, we'll check the extent of that tunnel by just taking a screwdriver and testing the wood or the wood source around it. I have actually used my hand and tapped on a floor joist and put my hand all the way through the floor joist.
Okay. Wow.
So the rot or extent to the wood can be very bad. Most of the time it's not, so people always freak out at termites. Remember, buy treated mulch.
And what's the good way to treat the termites if they are there? And then presumably if the wood is rotted, that's just a matter of cutting it out and replacing it if possible. But How do you treat the actual infestation?
There is a chemical, and again, you'd have to check with a licensed termite company that has a termite license to treat the home. I believe it's called Thermador, and it is a chemical that's approved by the government. That is drilled into the home's foundation like every 12 or so inches, and chemicals pumped into the home, and it creates a barrier around the home. Termite treatment used to be guaranteed for life a long time ago. The government outlawed the chemical called chlorodyne, which is no longer used today, but usually I believe the termite companies are given a 2 or 3 year guarantee on the termite treatment. I would highly recommend, if you have termites on the home, that you do an extended warranty on the home, because it does wear out over time.
Okay. And what can you tell me about radon inspections?
Radon is another thing that's a very specialized field, and it's kind of out of the realm of a home inspection. But there are good radon companies in Cincinnati. I recommend hiring somebody and spending $140 or so on a radon inspection where they use a true machine and they put it inside the house for over 24 hours. The house, all the windows and doors need to stay shut as much as possible for the machine to do its job. And radon is a gas that is kind of very common in the area, and it seeps through the envelope of the inside of your home. And according to the government, it does cause lung cancer over an extended period of time. I believe it's called piculars. Anything over 4 is recommended as far as having your home mitigated. And the mitigation system is basically a huge 4-inch PVC pipe that is drilled into the basement floor with a motor that pulls the gas out of the house and pushes it outside into the air.
Okay. It's not something that's, just you got radon, now suddenly your house is no longer sellable.
Right. No, it's been a hot button lately with a lot of health conscious people over the year. I would say 50% of the people, no, it's less than 50%, get the radon testing. It comes down to a financial expense. Most radon companies charge $140, some are $160. My clients, it's $135. We give a little bit of a discount on that if they want it, but when they're already spending money for an appraisal, and a termite inspection, a home inspection, you add on the radon, some people just waive that option. But it is becoming very popular. It's not a deal killer if somebody's buying your house, because then if you don't have it, they can opt out or opt in to get the radon testing done.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the 140, 160 you quoted, that's more for the Cincinnati area. It might vary from state to state, and not every state has as much radon issue as we have over here. And
correct. And if you were concerned with radon, the EPA has a website that you can go to. If you just Google EPA radon, it'll take you right to the EPA's website, and you can pull up a map of the United States and narrow it down to your area, and it'll show where the levels are heavily concentrated.
That's great. That's good information for people to know. Well, let's move on from radon. Let's talk about home inspection and how a seller can get ready.
I love that question.
They're not there. They're probably a little hesitant to have the home inspector in there, but at the same time too, they want their deal to get completed. So,
yes.
What's the best way for them to get out of the way, so to speak, and help you do your job?
That's a great question. Big things would be light bulbs. I know that sounds very petty, but if I see a light bulb that's out, for instance, this morning on a condo downtown in Cincinnati, there was a chandelier above a dining room table that had 5 lights, but 2 of the light bulbs were out. I could have assumed that the light bulbs were just out. I took one out, tested the fixture, and it was the fixture in that area.
Okay.
So just don't let a home inspector assume. Just change all your light bulbs, because then what if that's the only thing wrong with your house, and then the home inspector says, I need an electrician to go out there. That's going to cost you $100 for him to show up to the door. You could have just changed a couple light bulbs.
That's good advice.
Getting the home ready, make sure your attic access is accessible. It's not painted shut or sealed shut with screws. Make sure the electrical panel is accessible, where you can take the panel off. Very common in the area, people finishing their basements, and then they box in the electrical panel with a kind of miter picture box frame looking thing, and you can't even take off the electrical panel. We're not paid to sit there and dismantle your home and take the stuff apart, so make sure everything's accessible, especially closets. People, everybody has a lot of clutter. Empty out your closets so we can see behind walls and stuff like that, because certain home inspectors will dig and move stuff, certain ones won't. I prefer the ones that dig and get a little dirty just to find that extra little bit. But the big things, again, light bulbs, making sure the attic is accessible and the electrical panel is accessible. And it doesn't hurt. We're not there to check for dust bunnies, but it doesn't hurt to clean your house and get it ready and make it look presentable. That really does have an impression, and it helps.
Okay, that's all good advice. How about we talked earlier about buyers will tell you their concerns about the house that they've seen, and what is there anything the buyer needs to do to get ready for the inspection?
Show up with a check. No, I'm just kidding. No, that is a good question also, Paul. I personally, in my career of real estate in the last 15 years, every time I've ever bought, I wanted to know the lay of the land, where my markings were, how wide my lot was. There are many websites out there, or you can get it from the county. Go directly to the county. So like, if, for instance, Claremont County Auditor, search real estate, you can look up a lot of information on your home ahead of time. You want to know your square footage when the house was built. Big thing for buyers is get a copy of the seller disclosure, which lists any issues that the seller knew about the property. Age of the roof, age of the furnace, age of the water heater. Sometimes they know, sometimes they do not. But those two things right there would be the biggest thing. I highly encourage every client to show up to the inspection for at least a minimum of 1 hour. Some people, well, I'm fine, I don't need to be there, I'll just send you a check. Are you kidding me? I treat more of an inspection as an education too, because when you're there, I will show you everything inside and out about the home that I found, but also teach you tricks about owning a home to take care of it, preventative maintenance. And if you don't fix this down the road, let's say the seller doesn't fix it, you need to fix it immediately so that future issues don't happen.
That's good advice too. Sellers should come to get an education. And for you personally, how once the buyer's done the inspection, they buy the house. I mean, are you available to them afterwards if they had a question or something?
Yes, and I advertise that on my website. It's called Inspector for Life. This is not a, hey, Todd's going to be here a year or two, because there's a lot of turnover with home inspectors. I am here for a long time, at least 18 years in Cincinnati until my wife and I moved to Florida or North Carolina, chill on the beach.
That's always good.
But on my website, Inspector for Life, what that means for you is you're available to me 6 months down the road, the day you move in, 2 years later. I want to know if you have a problem or an issue about something, not really with my home inspection because you won't, but Todd, I now have bats underneath my deck. What do I do? Well, bats are now certain protected species. You can't just go out there and kill them. There are pest control companies, very few in the area, that are licensed to take care of bats. Or, Todd, I want to put a deck on my house. Can you help me out with the right contractor? Yes, I can. That is a free service. It's kind of like Cincinnati's Angie's List. I'm part of a network of 200 people in Cincinnati that are the most trusted vendors, and I can hook you up with anybody. So that's kind of what my Inspector for Life thing is on my website.
That's a very good service. Let's talk about having an inspection prior to listing their home for sale. I've wrote about this on a couple of my blog posts, and I know realtors around the U.S. they usually recommend to sellers get a home inspection prior to listing. What are the advantages for a seller to do that?
Every bit of dollar you spend on getting a pre-listing inspection is well worth it. Many, many reasons why. If you've been in the home, I would say over 2 or 5 years, especially if you've been in the home 10 or 20, that is a must, non-negotiable. I have an example for you. It happened here in Anderson. Guy had lived in this house 36 years. He had boxed in his electrical panel in the basement, tried to hide it. And not hide it, he wasn't hiding anything, just cosmetic. I opened up the door, and it was 6 feet by 2 feet of mold all over the panel. He had moisture intrusion from a small crack on the outside of his basement. It caused a leak. All of the breakers were rusty inside the panel. A lot of issues there. Number one, the house could have burned down that day. Number two, all the mold. So we caught it, and the guy had to spend a little over $1,200 to get a whole new panel, get all the mold cleaned up, save his documents, because the right thing to do is save those documents. He was aware of the issue, present those to the new seller, and move on. Now, let's say he didn't get an inspection. Do you think he would have sold his house?
Yeah, that would have been a big deal killer right there.
Exactly. So pre-listing inspections are huge. They're the responsible and right thing to do. And for selling your product, which is your house, but also it can, for the seller, and why this is such a great investment, it can get rid of a lot of back and forth negotiations between the agents. A lot of bickering is ended because I had a home inspection, it was done right, we fixed everything, here's the invoices, we fixed it. Here's my price.
Yeah, so it saves the seller time and money as well.
Yes. Now, if you're buying a house, you and your wife go to get a house, and they already had an inspection, get another one, because you don't know if that inspector is the person's brother, sister, cousin, friend. Don't assume that they got an inspection and then you're good. Get one to cover your own assets.
Yeah, just double check your bases there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good. Good information. And what would you recommend a home inspection for new construction? Would you recommend that, or should we trust the builder?
This is hilarious. I love it. Well, you should trust your builder. There's a lot of great builders in Cincinnati. what I see personally, we just did one on Wednesday in Mason, and it was a $500,000 home, and there was 2 gas leaks. One of them on the outside, the meters installed by Duke or their provider, whoever the provider was. Not sure if it was Duke, but the inside there was a leak at the furnace, gas leak, and then the roof, the second story back section of the entire roof needed to be replaced. The guy was closing in 2 days.
Wow.
What happened with this situation? All the shingles in about 7 of 10 of the layers were all destroyed from them adding siding after the roof was installed. Whatever boots or shoes these guys were wearing tore almost all the granules off of the shingles. So right there, bingo. Another one that I had in South Lebanon last year, the buyer had a very nice master bathroom, $700,000 house, and the subway tile on one wall did not match the other subway tile on the backsplash where the jacuzzi was.
Mm-hmm.
And I just pointed it out and asked him, didn't even notice. The color was off a little bit.
Okay.
But all the tile had to be removed because his wife, nope, it has to match. So very rarely do we find a lot of stuff with new construction, but when we do, it's usually something very major to the client.
Yeah, and so it makes sense then that, especially, not necessarily just, the high value homes too, but even a client, in a $200,000-$300,000 new home, they get a benefit by having a home inspection.
Absolutely.
It's just a second neutral party, come there and look through everything.
Yep, and especially if you have bought a new home, and again, I think I did 260 inspections in the last 12 months, and I think 5 of those were new construction. Red flag there, because I know they're built way more homes in Cincinnati than that. But if it comes down to like your 11th month, we have something called an 11th month inspection. Let's say you have a 1-year warranty for the builder, they'll fix anything within the first year. Call me at your 10th or 11th month.
That's a great feature right there, a great service right there, because I've purchased a new construction and I've had that issue too in the 10th or 11th month. It was an obvious issue. The siding started falling off and flapping in the wind, but that's an easy thing to see. But it would have been great to have a second eye come in there and look through the house and hey, you need to have this fixed or have that fixed. So that's very good advice. Well, thank you, Todd. Again, this is Todd Engle from Good Eye Inspections, and my name is Paul Cyan with HER Realtors. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll have all our information in the podcast links. So we'd like to hear from you, and thank you again for listening.